That's what I mean. I mean, if to turn on my mic, or if both of us mic on it.
While you're talking, while you're talking.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where in the world you are. And welcome to the Black Consciousness Festival and the 8th of our 20 conversations for 2020. Thank you for joining us on our Zoom webinar or on Facebook Live. The Black Consciousness Festival provides a global online platform for the commemoration, celebration, and sharing of vital histories and stories that boost the awareness and impact of the pride, power, and practice of people of African descent. The festival builds awareness around how each of us can take the necessary steps for restitution and reparation. Our conversation lead tonight is actor, acting coach, dancer, choreographer, and creative producer, Abeo Jackson. Welcome and enjoy tonight's conversation.
Hello, everyone. How are we tonight? I'm so honored that I've been asked to moderate this conversation tonight. It's an important conversation for a very crucial time in this 2020 reckoning, so to speak. I'm really honored to lead this conversation tonight. We talk The Body Remembers, the poetry of movement in African resistance. We have with us two experts in their fields, really wealth of knowledge, depth of experience. And first I want to introduce none other than Jamie Philbert of the Bois Academy. She's a choreographer, a performing artist, a martial artist, a curator, cultural researcher, and dance scholar. Jamie Philbert is the founder of Art on Purpose, a multifaceted life brand that promotes social awareness and cultural responsibility through dance, performance, and education, fashion, and creative arts education. She's a Bois woman. She's a warrior. She's a woman of Kalinda. Her journey inspired her to conceptualize and develop a dance and performance technique rooted in the living tradition and culture of Trinidad and Tobago's martial art form, Kalinda. And this initiative is supported by and co-created with Rondell Benjamin, founder of the Bois Academy of Trinidad and Tobago, and the transitioned legendary Bois man, King David Matthew Brown, also known as Acid. May he walk in power. Jamie is currently the pointer and director of Bois Academy of Trinidad and Tobago. Her work in this realm serves to continue the veneration of the keepers and ancestors of the tradition and empower the sustainability of this multi-dimensional tradition. Jamie believes in the power of art and its ability to heal, to create dynamic change, and she dedicates all her movement and magic to the legacy of her transitioned parents, Dennis and Veronica Philbert. May they walk in power. We also have Jamie, welcome. Yes. We also have Quan David. And he is instructor Quan David, if you please, also known as Zulu. Has been practicing capoeira for 14 plus years. He practices all aspects of the martial art. He's a certified capoeira instructor under the guidance of Mistress Jamaica. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly. If I butcher a name, please correct it. Thank you. Instructor Zulu is the head instructor of the Volta, Miuda Capoeira Academy in Trinidad, and he's done many projects with children from many parts of the country. His biggest project was Proyecto Capoeira Pela Paz, Capoeira for Peace project, which took place in Rock City, Laventille, which I'm so intrigued by, and we're going to talk about it. So welcome to Quan as well.
Thank you.
So I'm so pleased to have you both here. And I feel as before we start to talk the things, because we're going to talk the things, let's start the conversation of rights. When we talk in things like Kalinda and Capoeira, we talk in spirit, we talk in ancestors, and I feel it's very important to start it off on just the right note. These are traditions that are rooted in ritual, and I would say something that I think is within my realm of experience to start it, and then I would invite you all as well to either sing or say something that is also authentic and pays homage to your practice and your tradition. So I would say we come to the ancestors humbly with a grateful heart to show love, thanks, and appreciation for laying the path for us and guiding us in the right direction in all things we undertake, and particularly during this conversation this evening. We thank you for your protection, for all of our families and every single person who may be with us or impacted by anything said or done in this space. Let our words and energy this evening be a positive manifestation and an offering. Walk with us. Help us to remember the choices and decisions we made before entering this realm. Ashe.
Ashe.
Jamie.
I give thanks and praise to the Most High Creator. I give thanks and praise to the spirit of Kalinda. I give thanks and praise to the energies of my mother and father and their lineage. I ask that I be used as a vessel as I walk this path this evening, and in every conversation and every word that is echoed throughout my system, that it honors those people that are not only transitioned from this space, but are cultural holders inside of this space. Simba Simbi.
All right. So I want to give thanks to all the forefathers of Capoeira, all our ancestors that died for this art form. Give thanks to my parents. Give thanks to the Creator God Almighty. I'd sing a quick ladaina, which entails the history, some history, or gives a story of what we're about, okay? Usually we start this before we go into our order. So I'll start with one. Yay! Negro no que mais correr. Negro no que mais sofre fito. Oh, le, 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 oh, le, 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 oh, le, 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 oh. Ashe.
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 All right. So now that we start the thing off right, let us talk the things. So, folks would have, most people I would want to think, if I can risk the generalization, have a very, limited, or if not limited, a passing knowledge, I suppose, of what Kalinda entails and what Capoeira really entails. So let's give some people some context by pretty much just asking the straightforward questions to both of you. What is Kalinda? What is Capoeira? And within that framework, let's talk about what is the genesis of both these martial art forms and which era of resistance did these art forms respectively come into modern day prominence. Either one of you could start.
Quan looked like
You
he was
wanna-
ready. Go ahead, Quan. You look like you was ready.
That us ladies before jets.
We could pull
All
that
right.
card and go take it.
Get that.
So Kalinda, not with the C, which the Portuguese would have put and the French would have put on it in a particular way. Kalinda or Kalenda. The word itself, Maureen Warner Lewis speaks to the ka being a drum. She's associating it with K, which is also a Bantu Congo word. So it comes from West Central Africa, the lineage of Kalinda. So I looked up more of the word based on Maureen Warner Lewis's scholarship. The lenda is opposing. So by her definition, it means the opposing drum or the opposition of the drum. I like the definition. However, when I've gone in and done some more research on different N2 languages, which is coming from the word Bantu, Ubuntu, Muntu. So these N2 languages would include a breadth of different West Central Africa languages, yeah, from Bantu peoples. Now we know that Bantu peoples span about 400 different groups of people. So I'm not speaking to one language in particular. So we'll deal with N2 languages. Ka and Li, or Kali together, speaks to woman energy. And Yenda or Genda or Enda speaks to going. Ka by itself is also woman energy, and Li is male energy. So what I feel the meaning is, or one of the many meanings that it may have, is woman and man going, or the woman or the man going. The going for me speaks to the life cycle. All of the dances inside of Kalinda, Trinidad's Kalinda, it's a system of dances. At some point it got broken apart. So our Kalinda, really basic, is drumming, singing, or moaning, humming, which are the lavways that are sung usually by Chantuel, dancing, which is done by the stick fighters, but also by just about everyone inside of the space. But when we're talking about the dance, we're talking about the stick dance that's done, and the stick fighters and the rituals inside of it. Yeah, so the stick fighting that happens as well too. So that's the entire complex. That complex included a set of dances that we know as Bel Air, Pique, Bongo, Limbo. Bongo and Limbo were actually not two separate things. It used to just be Bongo, right? And at some point, Limbo got separated, and now we have this Limbo dance, yeah? However, there is a dance in West Central Africa called Lungun Dungum. And this dance is basically, looks like it's described as the Limbo in the same way. So in terms of where Kalinda came from, like I said, West Central Africa, we're attributing it to Bakongo culture. There is a group of people in West Central Africa called the Kunene people. And the Kunene people had two different traditions of martial arts. One of them was called Kandeka, which is headbutting, slap boxing, stick fighting, rock throwing, whips, and foot sweeps, yeah? So foot fighting, basically. And Golo, which is the other form they would have had, is basically inversions, foot fighting, not a whole bunch of grappling things going on, but basically what Capoeira looks like today, yeah? So it's one of the oldest forms of Capoeira, and I believe that the Kandeka is closer to it, but because both styles were mixed in warfare, and they both would have made their way across the Atlantic into our space, into the Caribbean period. And then eventually, because the first set of Africans that were in Trinidad was in the 1500s, when the Spanish was here. And there were also free Africans that were here during that time as well too. Whether or not, I do believe that there was some Congo, I'm still doing research on that, but there were some Congo people here as well too. Even if there wasn't, these stick fighting arts spanned because the Bantu people would have migrated throughout Africa. So wherever they picked them up, they would have caught on to that treasure that was inside of those bodies. So I don't say the word slave, and I don't say enslaved, and when I say colonize either, because those things are from the lens and the perspective of the oppressor. So Kalinda is not a system of oppression. It is a system of, I'll use one of Tony Hall's words, emancipation. It is a system of resistance, yeah? And more than anything else, it is a way of life, yeah? And it's a living tradition in Trinidad and Tobago. It exists in other forms in other parts of the Caribbean and the world. In Martinique, it looks like Laja. So basically what happened is if you take the stick out of a capoeira angulero's hand, or somebody that does Damier or Laja's hand, or somebody doing other type of grappling or slap boxing style, you'll see the same movement of Kalinda. And because capoeira is something that's percussive in its combat form, it speaks to the percussive nature of Kalinda as well too. So that's the roots would have just tied in. And just because of the way that they separated us and the way that we then invented things in spaces, and when I'm saying invented, I mean the names, because the styles really have not changed that much. People may have added individual things because we, as futuristic people, that's going to happen. But it wasn't a situation where we were doing this because of slavery.
Right. Gotcha. I love the fact that you've already introduced the connection between the two art forms, between the two practices, so to speak. But let's get Quan's take on in terms of his context of what is capoeira and exactly what would have allowed the art form and the practice to come to prominence, and which era of resistance exactly we would have seen capoeira rise to prominence, so to speak.
Okay, so capoeira was more or less brought to the forefront, well, to the world through a famous mestre named Mestre Bimba. Okay, he founded one of the first academies in Brazil. He also fought for them to more or less make it okay to practice capoeira, because in Brazil capoeira was illegal to practice. Okay, if they saw you practicing, you could have been to jail. So I'll touch a little bit on something concerning that. So as you all know, we use instruments. We use drums, we use berimbau, atabaki, agogo, and different things. Okay, so sometimes we have different rhythms, and everything is so connected to slave. Forget we're not saying those words. everything, everything
You can
is so.
say it, Quan. I just don't say it.
Okay. Everything is so connected to that oppression, right? Um, they used to play certain rhythm, so if they saw the police or whoever coming, they would play a type of rhythm or speed it up. Most famous one is Cavalaria, right? So it sounds like a horse galloping. Okay, so when the horses come in and the police on it, they'll play that, and that will signal that police coming, right? So Mestre Bimba, he literally fought for capoeira to be okay to practice. As you all know, worldwide, Brazil was the last place for slavery to be abolished. Okay, it was abolished like 30 years after, I think. You know, so that's how far back they had to fight a whole 30 years extra. You know, while the world was fighting for a lot of things to be okay to eat and a dine with everyone and stuff like that. Okay, capoeira has two styles. Angola, which is the more traditional, they more on the spiritual side and stuff like that. Not saying the other side, Hishonal, is not. Okay, it's just that they pay more homage to the ancestry of capoeira, right? Um, they had to fight for every single thing where that art form is concerned. Everything. I remember when I went to Brazil, there's these small villages called quilombos. Okay, the name of my school is actually a quilombo. Volta Miuda is a quilombo. What happened is the slaves would run away, and they would seek refuge in these villages, and they'll be very independent. They'll have their own cheese, their own milk, their own cows, everything, right? And up to this day, the 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 history of the forefathers, Mestre Bimba and it's still so. When you walk into a Quilombo, the spirituality of it, I think a lot of capoeistas might in Trinidad might not be able to understand what I'm saying, although they practice it. Okay, because you walking through this village and you're feeling everything that happened. You don't even feel like yourself. You don't feel like you. Okay. Volta Miuda translate to something like small wrong. And we're talking about how capoeira, how it is how it is brought to the forefront in this era, right? And my mestre, my teacher, he always says that in life, the order, which is the circle, life is just like that. You fall, you get back up. You get a kick, you humble yourself, you continue going. You know? So it applies to the same thing as life, you keep going. And it brings me to my project in Laventille, where I do a project called Proyecto Capoeira pela Paz, Project Capoeira for Peace. Okay? And when I went to Rock City, I met these kids there. And where I went in Brazil, it had a lot of crime in the area, okay? But it was mostly Afro-Brazilians, more Afro-Brazilians than anything where I stayed. And they showed me a very real side to something that I didn't know. You know, like you watch on the news and you condemn Trinidad and the culture and stuff because of the crime and whatnot. And when you travel, you learn that worldwide it is like that. It's just in some parts of the world it is a little more sensitive because it goes back to how much they were oppressed and stuff like that. People think, okay, this thing happened 400 and something years ago. That has nothing to do with me. But I think if you leave something with enough time, it could be enough time to make something a culture. Correct or wrong?
No, it's interesting that you've already delved into your work in Laventille, because I really am quite interested in ideas of resistance and what that means to you and how resistance translates into the now. So that's actually a question I wanted to ask both of you all, in terms of what does resistance mean to you both as artists, as creatives, as well as martial artists, and the particular practice that you've built, and how does that resistance translate into your work, and the kind of maybe outreach and advocacy that you do through the practice, through your practice. Jamie?
I think for me, resistance is creation and destruction, which is very much Kalinda. We have this word that's going around now, decolonization, that I understand the breadth of it and what it is, the work that is inside of it. There's a lot of good work going on inside of it. But what if we destructed as opposed to, and not deconstruct, I didn't mess up, destruct. You know, things are only created or destroyed. So trying to decolonize yourself from something that colonized you, when does the separating line happen? So how do you not become the colonizer in that moment of decolonizing? So for me, resistance is creating and destroying. As an artist, as a martial artist, as a practitioner of Kalinda, it's a constant that's constantly happening throughout my day. Resistance is living inside of my virtuosity, because that is something that the public does not want you to do. Resistance is knowing that I am the living proof of every scholarship that is written, every history that has been told. So that's my resistance, my black face showing up in the place.
Nice. That's right. And for you,
Well,
Quan?
well, Jamie, you hit the nail on the head there. You know that because I was actually gonna touch on, yes, resistance is destruction and creating, right? Let's touch on that the subject of lavender. Okay, this would give you all a perfect example and an analogy of what is resistance. Okay, so with capoeira, as you all know, I explained already, it's been a struggle, it's been a fight. Okay, um, the practice alone, what you put your body through, the highs and the lows, there's times that you have personal stuff. We're talking about breaking down and building back, right? So there are times you have personal stuff going on at home and you think you want to drop out, you get an injury, you continue training, right? We're talking about the highs and the lows. So I'll give a good example here. Why I started that project in Rock City is because I don't call myself a victim. I am one of them who I'm a person who experienced losing someone through violence. Okay. So I have a big brother and he was murdered, right? And I was going into the police force because I wanted to make a difference. And then I was like, that ain't sitting right in here, you know? So I didn't, but it's, yeah, I growing an asshole kind of thing. So, you know, it didn't go sit right anyway, right?
As
So,
well as, I mean, we all know that, I mean, there are police officers who do good work, etc. But we also
correct,
know that the police force, the new manifestation of the
correct,
constabulary is problematic in several ways,
correct,
systemically, especially for people, Black people and Black lived experiences.
correct. So I started this project because of that experience. And to be honest with you guys, the people who killed him, I wanted revenge, right? And a friend of mine said, Quan, I went to someone for a firearm and I was like, Quan,
Hmm.
you sure you want to do this? You know, if you go down that road, it's a type of road. Then he went on to say, look how good you're doing with this capoeira. You can now come. At that time I went Venezuela, he was like, you now come back from Venezuela. He said, think about it one more night. And then if you want to do, guys. So I went to think about it, prayed about it. And then certain things started to happen in my life where I started seeing things more on a spiritual level, you know. So I was more or less not seeing anything for what it was, right? But instead what it is, right? So these kids in Rock City, what happened is I just wanted them to, I just wanted to show them a different side of life. Now, mind you, I was teaching them for free. I was, I was doing everything for free. Okay. Some days I could make it. I used to find myself up there. I didn't do it because I wanted fame or anything like that. It's just that I believe these group of children, Afro Trinidadian, I just felt that they needed to see where they came from. And I thought that I could have shown them that through capoeira, okay? Because if it had not been for my involvement or learning the art form, because I don't think I would have even been speaking to you all. I don't think my mind would have been so open towards so many things, spirituality and everything, right? I think depending on where I would have been, I would have shown a lot of stuff. You all would have been talking, and I would have been like, what? so so these kids, they needed to see a different side of life. They needed to understand where their forefathers came from and stuff. Now we spoke about breaking and rebuilding. I think their lifestyle would have been a broken one because of certain things. Now when talk, they shared a lot with me, because a lot of things they've been through, that's all they knew, you know. And I don't think they needed a handout or money or anything like that to to feel good. I think they needed to know who they are and where they came from. You understand?
They
So
needed to
when we
see themselves.
they needed to see themselves, they
Yeah.
needed to look in a mirror, you know. So I think for me, that's where the me taking the initiative to rebuild. I think that is what I did with that project, with those kids. For myself, it is being involved after losing someone. You know, it is finding out about my ancestors. It is finding about my culture and stuff like that.
I
You know,
think it is a beautiful analogy in terms of what resistance means to you. And sometimes we feel as though resistance only involves militancy. But I think that story that you just gave in terms of um, you making a choice to go in
mm-hmm,
another direction is a form of resistance in itself. You
mm-hmm,
defying the potential stereotype and the pull
correct.
towards a certain that pull towards revenge. So I think it's a beautiful representation of what capoeira was able to do for you and what
For
you in
me, correct,
turn was able to use it to do for other people. Jamie, something you wanted to
correct.
add?
I just wanted to add that, you know, the work of Bois Academy is resistance work. There has been an idea of what stick fighting is in Trinidad and Tobago. And most people that I talk to that are not particularly in these types of spaces, oh, that's rum shop thing. Stick fighting is not that. So you'll hear me
my
say,
mentality would have been, Jamie.
but this is what I'm saying. Most people, right? It is a spiritual system. Like I said, it's a way of life. You know, so the work of Bois Academy is to venerate the ancestors, the cultural holders of this space, and disseminate Kalinda into the world, right? Because it's in the world already, but it's in pieces, and we don't know all the connectors to it. Beyond the technique that I've developed with Rondo Benjamin and King David, there is work that I just have done regularly inside of dance training as well too, right? So my babies learn how to cook. So they don't just dance, which is a very Kalinda thing. So they learn what community is. You'll hear me say often that Kalinda is love. That's resistance, you know, and Quan saying what he said, like, you know, remind me like, yeah, Kalinda is love and that is resistance, and people understanding that love is many things. Right. So sometimes when I say it, I think that people are thinking, oh, it's just, oh, it can be like this. And then me representing it, I'm like, no, don't get it confused. Like, it's still creation, it's still destruction, it's still warfare, but it's also love, because love is all of those things too. You know,
that's right.
And I think us looking, the same thing I said about, you know, that vision of what the oppressor thinks about us versus what we think about ourselves. And we have to get back to that place. And I think the work to get to that place is resistant work, you know?
That's right.
You're absolutely right. Love is resistance. And you know what? Let me qualify it. Especially if we're talking about Blackness and Black lived experiences. Black love is resistance. Black joy is resistance. Black family is resistance. You understand? Black community. Gayap and Susu, and not this trash. Thank you. Not this trash thing we're now talking Susu. Lenhan and them thing. That is resistance. You understand what I mean? So I feel like we need to bring it back to us. And the thing is, everybody has a different role to play in the resistance. There are some people who will be the warriors. There are some people who will be in the kitchen cooking. There are some people who will be the messengers. There are some people who are the voices of the movement. Everybody has their role. And I think within each of your practices, it is very clear that there are those various spaces and roles and hierarchies within the system. But piggybacking on one thing Jamie said earlier about
don't
Kalinda
go away from the roles, huh? Don't go away from the roles yet. Before you piggyback.
Before I piggyback.
Before you piggyback. The role, I agree with you on what you're saying in terms of everybody has their role, but especially in Kalinda, and because of what our historical forms have been and how we live, everybody had to learn everything.
Fair.
Likewise in
You understand?
Capoeira.
Because when revolution pop up, because we ain't had no revolution. Revolution means to turn something on its head. We've had movements.
That's right.
So we have to what you're saying. There have been revolutions in our history, but this generation talking about revolutions, we're having movements. You have to turn the whole thing upside down, and then you can tell me you had a revolution.
That's right.
So in order, this is the preparation for the revolution. And inside of that, I can't just know how to cook. I have to use that spoon, that knife to cut somebody open if I have to.
Fair enough.
You understand? So you may not have to do it, you know, but just in case,
you should be able to. You should be able to.
Kalinda people know how their agriculture is. The form comes from being pastoral people. So there were people that always work with the land. They always work with the animals. The spiritual system behind it incorporates minerals, plants, animals. And Nkisi is the word. Yeah, and Nkisi is a Congo word, but we see it in Nkisi on the stick fighter's costume during carnival. So the stick fighter is basically, Benji and I were talking about this, that the stick fighter is literally the walking Nkisi. He is the walking medicine, right? And let's make sure you hear the she inside of the he. So don't take my he as just.
Yes.
But it's we're the walking medicine, the protection of the space. Yeah, so you're that amulet that is actually protecting the whole community. So that role is not encompassing of one thing. Yes, you might have one job. Abeo, tonight your job is to be moderator. but Abeo does a plethora of things.
Facts.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's necessary. And then you sit in the role you need to. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
But before, Abby,
Mm-hmm.
before you jump on that piggyback, before you start a
Before
piggyback,
piggyback. Mm-hmm.
I just want to say touch on something Jamie was saying just now there. In terms of everybody have to learn everything more or less. We're talking about ashe, okay? We're talking about energy here, right? So with the capoeira, well, we practice in a circle,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I strongly believe in what she's saying about everybody have to know at least a little bit of something, because that's how the energy works, okay? With capoeira, automatically, if you come to a class, I'll be teaching you how to kick.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see me playing the drum, and you would want to learn to play the drum. That's your first class. Huh? Then later on in the class, you'll want to play the berimbau. Okay? With that circle, if any one of you come there, let's say you are upset, you'd feel that. What I do with my students is sometimes, if you're down or whatever, everybody would feel it. The other would be dead. So now you need to be strong for everybody.
Mm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You need to be strong for everybody. Goes back to what Jamie was saying. You don't only need to know how to cook, you have to be able to cut somebody if you have to. Well.
Yes.
And
Do
with you saying that, Quandi, thing is that Kalinda people, that's what they've done in Trinidad.
Mm,
They protected the
okay.
space
Right,
completely.
right.
You know,
And
that's
and
right.
everybody have to step up to that.
it's still everybody has to step up to that, but it doesn't take away from the role of what the Kalinda person is. They are
Correct.
protected.
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean? So
right.
I think that's what Abeo is saying. Like, you're not, everybody has a role in terms of, you do this, you do that.
We do
If
that,
for
but
some reason I fight and then a man coming up behind me and you see the man, because you know what to do, you're
you'll
supposed to
do it.
help me,
That's right.
Yeah,
you
You deal
know?
with the matter. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But it
Um,
doesn't change that if I'm the warrior. If I'm the warrior, then there's things I got to do that you may not be able to do, and that's okay.
yes.
Right.
Just want to interject. Folks who are asking questions, we're gonna save the Q&A till a little bit closer down to the end. But please keep posting your questions, just so that we make sure and we get to all of them a little bit closer down to the end. But it was just an aside that I was piggybacking on in terms of these systems and these practices being about community.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I really get, that sense of community, and that these systems really are little microcosmic examples of how we should live, and how we recover from the trauma of because in a previous conversation, Jamie, where where you did mention to me, you reiterated that these systems and practices didn't come as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and chattel slavery. They came long before. They were genetic, ancestral coding in our body that we always knew. And within the community, there were also spiritual systems. That separation of limbo and the bongo, the fact that they were one dance. And originally, the limbo didn't used to go from highest to lowest. It used to go from lowest to highest, because it was about the spirit transcending from one realm to the other. After, when you go to a wake, that's why they do the limbo and the bongo at the wake. These are things that is important for us to know. The direction was changed because it was people realized that it was commercial. There was a commercial reason, a performative reason for changing the direction in which the bar went. So these are all the
Right.
types of things that we need to remember when we have this kind of discussion. And that whole thing of the body remembers, I really want to zone in on that, because there's a lot of research that has happened in terms of that genetic DNA and ancestral DNA, and the fact that the
Mm,
trauma of the experience has been passed down through generations, and it manifests in various ways. It still resonates in various ways in the descendants, whether it be higher rates of poverty, unemployment, access to resources, predisposition to certain health issues, and whatnot. But the same way the trauma has transcended in some ways that we are dealing with now in a new manifestation of Black consciousness. How have you, what have you discovered in while engaging in the practice of Kalinda and Capoeira in terms of that body memory, that muscle memory? How natural is this affinity for us, and what do you see? Have you seen it actively change, reach, teach, touch, transform people? You know what I mean? I
I
wonder if you
I
understand where I'm going with that question.
I understand perfectly. Kwan's look, you
I
want to talk.
understand.
Hitman.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying before, right? In terms of when I said you just explain what I said about something being a culture after so long, okay? And I could say that I have that experience of having that trauma handed down because sometimes you need water and you wanna come to tears. Why? Why you throwing a man throwing a fast kick at your head? Why you so emotional? Eh?
Hmm.
Why you so emotional? So sometimes we singing songs. Like my eye tearing up and I'm talking about this. We singing songs and stuff. You need hold on, you just get so emotional, but you can't explain what it is. Okay, we go back to what you were saying about trauma. You know, the ancestors, they speak. They speak through us through the practice. They speak to us through the practice. You know, so that's my 2 cents on that trauma there. I've experienced it numerous times. A lot of capoeistas out there. Benji could tell you about that. You get very emotional, very, very, very emotional. And until that happens to you in the practice of it, then I don't think you've experienced or you haven't been touched as yet. You haven't been touched. You haven't had that spiritual experience as yet. You know? So it's in a nutshell, Jamie.
I
Jamie,
think
it
I think for me, as much as the traumas have been passed down, Joy Leary talks about Dr. Joy Leary talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome, and for
That's
many
right.
years I studied that. But have come to understand, and through Kalinda, is that while the traumas were passed down, so were the gifts,
That's right.
and
mm,
the gifts were actually passed down over the traumas.
Hmm.
We did not, we experienced slavery, yes, um, but we were never slaves. We were
mm,
human beings. We did not look at, I refuse to believe that people who created whole systems, I mentioned this on the radio the other day, that traded with the Portuguese, traded literacy, build universities. Their entire life was built around martial ways, not just combat fighting. Yeah, it
mm,
was based on the dignity of being a human being. They call it muntu. That's the highest level of human being that you could be. So when we saw these other people, we weren't looking at them like people that was trying to do dirty. When we realized that, okay, we got to be a little strategic. So we might have to sell some of the foreign slaves that we have to keep them away from our people for a little while, right? West Central Africa held them off for a long time by different strategies. Um, I think some of our trauma, while we would have experienced some of that trauma inside of the slavery experience, inside of the colonization experience, I really believe that our systems of thriving allowed for us to be where we're sitting right now. We're having a panel discussion on Zoom about what our ancestors did. You know what I mean? Like that's what I mean when I say I'm the living proof. It's not just me, it's all of us, you
That's
know?
right.
mm,
So I know what you're talking about, Quan, in terms of tears. I have cried singing live ways. I cry from playing stick, but it's not a tear. It's not a traumatic feeling. I've seen
no, it's not.
um, I've seen an emotion come out of David, come out of Benji, other stick fighters I've seen on video, but it's not trauma. It's not what
No,
I'm
it's not.
seeing. It's a
Right.
powering up. The word would be into the word, they're moving across what is called the Kalunga line, which is that line that separates the physical realm from the spiritual realm. You know, it's a doorway, it's a porthole. So we are literally, when we hold our sticks like this, that's the dividing line. We understand that we're walking with a certain spiritual and ancestral power that the slave master, the colonizer, the oppressor of today, the neo-colonists cannot figure out, which is why they're
Nope.
still beaten up. We have to think about it. Why would they, to enslave someone, right? Because the slaves existed in Africa, but it wasn't the same chattel slavery.
No, it was not.
When they approached us and they locked the steel around your neck, they lock up your hand, they lock up your foot. They knew what they were coming up against. What they did not account for was us holding on to our practices and Mama Africa being so smart, Kalinda being so smart that she would hide herself inside herself. And then she would spread out to a point where she creates all these rivers that only lead back to her ocean.
Diaspora.
And if you look at if you look at all of our forms, it's in everything. So have we retained it? Absolutely. It's in the way that we speak. Even me, when I went to America, I was 9 years old, and I assimilated my tongue because the children were making fun of me in school. And I said to my mom, you know, Mommy, is there something wrong with the way that I speak? Because these kids are acting like I'm stupid, and I know that I'm smarter than them. I know that. And she's like, no, Jimmy, no, you're not stupid. So I said, well, listen, I have to change the way I speak because I need them to understand that I can speak like them and I can speak like me.
Like you,
right?
correct.
And we have done that throughout history. When we land in anybody's space, we will adapt your dance, your language, whatever, because we've been doing that. Let me show you what else could go with your thing.
Yeah.
That's a nice dress. Let me show you how else to make that better. That is who we are. So I don't feel the trauma in my life in a certain way. And I think what happens is when we read certain historical things again, while even when it's us that's writing it, some of it is coming from the lens of these people. Correct. It's not coming from what we know in our spirit. Correct. When you cook in food, you doesn't look in no recipe book. You doesn't look at it. We just like to buy Patty LaBelle and them thing. We just like to buy them kind of thing. But we don't need, you're not even looking to see how much seasoning you're throwing there. And then the meat is going around. I just stop when the ancestors tell me to stop.
When it tells it to stop.
And that's with anything. That's with anything. When we go out and we dancing, the way that we dance, if we look at all of our dancing, I can give you some historical things. Whining. It's Kalinda. Kumina made dance hall and reggae.
That's right.
Kumina is Kalinda.
And hip hop. And hip hop also has its threads. Yep.
Hip hop, jazz, house, blues. It all came from that. Calypso. Yeah. That takata, 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 takata. You hear that in everything. So knowing those things, having that rhythm, knowing that when I walk, that's the rhythm that my hips make. So yeah, I'm walking without trauma because this is what they're all trying to appropriate constantly. The trauma comes from us not feeling like we can grasp the whole of our histories, not remembering.
That's right. I just want to stick a small pin there because I know I was saving the questions till the end, but I did happen to see one where it asked, someone asked, how do these systems, how can we use these systems to dismantle systemic racism? And I think you just hit on it there in terms of changing narrative and seeing and recognizing self in all that we do, and the ability to stop seeing ourselves through another lens and using the systems that are already inside of us, the memory that already exists within us, to allow us to transcend above and beyond stereotype, you know. And yes, there are some mechanics to dismantling systemic. I always say the responsibility to end oppression does not really land in the hands of the people who are oppressed. So there is that aspect of it. Fine, yes, but at the same time, we know that within systems of this nature, through everything that you all just said in terms of understanding the power, the far-reaching ramifications of it, how the power in diaspora, that that in itself is a tool that I don't know if we are if we have fully grasped how powerful that is in terms of that
No,
change of narrative.
We can't grasp it, Abeo, because parts of us like the system that they put us inside of.
Comfort, comfort.
Comfort,
You understand? Some
comfort,
people like it, and
and
we
being
don't
afraid of
be
change.
being a. The thing is, change is constant, so you could be afraid of it all you want. It will happen regardless, right? That is what
Sometimes,
we're supposed to do. Afrofuturism is about us changing constantly because there are traditions that have to be passed on. Those traditions are also based inside of the life cycles that are set up inside of our systems. In Bantu cosmology, the Dikenga is basically that, right? So there we come from the ancestral realm, we go into a space of birth, we go into the height of our life, which is the highest point of the sun. We are people of the sun, we are the second sons. And then you go into your death phase, which is the point where you start, you're older, you know it's time for you to start passing things on. I do not believe there are moments when things happen tragically, but before King David passed away, the last couple of weeks, every time I spoke to David, there was a change in David. There was a calmness that he was getting. It was certain things that he was sharing with me that felt like he was passing things on. And I wasn't really paying it attention because you just don't want these people to go, right? So when it happened, um, grief, all those things. But what I thought about is he knew to some extent, you know?
he
And
knew.
so there's a knowing that happens when we're living inside of these systems that we're supposed to be living inside of. But if we don't want to live completely in it, you know, and our systems contain luxury as well. They contain luxury, but we want the luxuries that the oppressor has given us. Our children don't need to be decolonized. They're born from us without slavery and decolonization. Why would you need to decolonize a child?
True,
You
but
are colonized.
true.
So that is
I
why,
think
but we have, as adults, we gotta look at the traumas we put on our babies. So talking about changing it and changing the system, it has to start with what we show the younger generation and start to work out what's inside of us and adapt, like Abeo just said, our systems. Kalinda, I said it on the radio the other day, it's a pre-generator of carnival. We keep pushing carnival. We vex that carnival not happen. You want to know why it's not happening? And King David said it. Because we have done nonsense with Kalinda in this space. We have treated the stick fighters badly.
Facts.
King David said it. He said they will not have a carnival until they start to do right. And then the man come and transition. I looking around and I watching this whole thing going on like, wow. Like he said it and so said, so done. Now, do I believe there will be no carnival? Yes, but there's a way that the space has been wanting carnival to go for a very, very long time. Why hasn't it gotten there? We are well equipped to do it, but if we keep pushing back the thing that has protected the country, that has saved Carnival, that made Carnival the thing that it is today, how do you expect to get anywhere? If we don't honor our ancestors, you think you'll be safe? You think you'll be good? We got to stop playing. We're playing.
I
Quan,
think
go ahead.
oh, Jamie, I just want to touch on something you said there, right? I think one of the biggest things we need to do with the knowledge we know and the experience is pass on what we know. Because I think you see you're saying our babies, they are not slaves and what, none of us, we aren't slaves, okay? But I think the system it's set up in a way right now very indirect, right?
Which
I was having
system?
this the world system, okay, the Western system, right? I was having this conversation today. Actually, this is the second time I had this conversation, and I think what they did is put slavery still, I think, in a very technical way, but it is only exercise on those who don't know, right? It's only exercise on those who don't know. There's a lot of people I know they don't read. They don't. When I say read, I'm talking about dig up in your culture, your history, and stuff like that. There's a lot of people, especially younger generation, don't care to want to know. Okay, and it goes back to what you were saying in terms of honoring your ancestors. Okay, we look at our communities, and we look at how it's going in terms of negative. There's a lot of positive, but in terms of negativity, we look at that. And you was talking about the carnival, and they don't want to honor the stick fighters and stuff like that. Okay, and you say more or less, what you're trying to say is more or less they paying for what they did, right? Because King David
We
saw it
all are.
coming to
It's
pass.
not. It's not just NCC. We all
Correct,
are
correct
essentially.
is
You know what
right,
I mean? And I'm not
right.
excluding. I'm saying that when you know better, you do better, right?
Ah,
So
in a nutshell.
yeah, somebody is put in the group that all the things I was saying is trauma. Yes, agreed, it is. But this is what I'm saying. The question is, how do you get out of it, right? How do we change
Knowledge,
it? you know
knowledge. You
and it's
need to know.
seeking that out,
Yeah, you
the
need
moment
to
that
know.
but you have to seek out the forms, and you got to seek it out in the right order as well too. Kalinda is not just a physical system, it is a spiritual system. It is a system of ritualized warfare, and
Mm,
inside of that it contains everything from food, healing arts, dance. It's everything that we've been separating, right? And I'm not saying Kalinda ain't for everybody. Let me say that it's not for everybody. She don't call everybody. So it's okay if we all can't gravitate towards that. But we have multiple systems.
Facts.
We have
Exactly.
multiple systems. So finding the system, and not just finding the system, because we have some of us, just like any other human being, you find the system and you want to talk the system and not walk the system.
mm,
So in your private moments, and that's how you really get rid of trauma. In your private moments is when you do that work, a level of accountability. Our martial art forms, our movement forms are about honor. We're not fighting just to beat each other down. We're fighting for honor.
And
correct.
this is it, this idea in terms of us always having had that fighting warrior spirit, this ideas of dance and fight, um, and the fact that that has been a spirit that in a lot of ways has been vilified, one, and two, has also been, people have tried to co-opt it for their own ends and for their own means. And because of the fact that we don't understand our own power and what it was really for, or what we could actually use it for to empower, we've allowed it to be co-opted, which is why I personally think we have so many of our young black children dying in the streets because of the fact that they are unaware of their power, which is why the work that you're doing in Laventil is so important, which is why the work that you're doing at the Bois Academy is so important. But Quan, Jamie, of course, we've spoken about Kalinda within the context of carnival in many ways. Is there a festival in which capoeira really thrives, lives, exists, is most
Well,
visible?
well, because of the nature of capoeira, because of okay, we have batizados, right? That's when you're being baptized into the capoeira world, more or less. Okay, that's when you prove or show that you have a better understanding of what it is. Okay, it's a ranking system, and as you go up, you get closer to understanding the spiritual aspect of it, right? Um, Capoeira, it's been an art form that's been adapting throughout the years, right? From the birth of the first academy and stuff like that, it's been adapting. Um, from it being just more more offense and defensive movements to it being acrobatic to it being vocal to it being instrumental, Um, I don't want to say that we have a festival because in Brazil, every two corners is capoeira, you know. So I think they celebrate capoeira is day to day life for most of us. We take that same practice
Right.
and bring it into our day to day life, So I don't want to say it as a festival. We do the batizados, but I think we take it day to day, a day at a time. So, so
I'm seeing here where you would find capoeira in the festivals of Yemanja and Nosso Senhor in Bahia. That capoeira is very central to. I think what I'm really asking is that maybe festival isn't even necessarily the correct term, because carnival was never necessary. It wasn't necessarily that carnival was a festival. Carnival emerged out of resistance. It emerged out of a movement and an era and a need. So I guess what I'm
Yeah.
asking is there something that is somewhat equivalent to which capoeira is particularly central?
Oh, okay, okay. They do keep uh I don't want to use the word festival.
No, it's more about something that commemorates resistance, because that's what
Right.
carnival is.
You
You know
see?
what I mean? Yeah.
Right. So you see in that piece of history there in Bahia, right? That's the same Mestre Bimba, the same
Mm-hmm.
Mestre speaking about. His school was founded in Bahia, right? So I think outside they celebrate capoeira and they celebrate what he did and they celebrate the ancestors, they celebrate um people that died for the art form, you know. So I don't want to say it's a festival, it's a celebration. You know, it's a celebration. I find festival because of what my experience with capoeira. It's resistance, but it shows so much freedom through the movements and through the art form itself, the cultural aspect of it, um the history of it, coming from Angola and stuff like that. Yeah, so I think it's a celebration.
Yeah.
I think using the word festival, it
It
a little
belittles
too,
it. Yeah.
yeah, it a little too dry cut. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
It's
it's a
much. It is
celebration.
much more than that.
It is way more about it. You know, it's much more. Yeah.
Y'all spoke about about that whole idea of passing on the practice, and
Mm.
there's a huge conversation I know happening within the Trinidadian context right about now about archiving, because every time we lose an elder, it's like we lose a whole encyclopedia. We lose a library of knowledge. And it goes for all of the art forms and the disciplines and all of the practices. So what are y'all doing within each of your practices, within the communities in Trinidad and Tobago, both Kalinda and Capoeira, to archive the form? Is there a way, or is it something that can be written, recorded, or passed down through just stories told from elder to mentee, etc.?
Well, Jamie, am I?
I don't mind. You already well. I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. Um, with capoeira, we are speaking about the batizado, right? And I mentioned that as you go up in rank or the ranking system, you need to acquire certain skill sets. All of this is prepping you to be able to hand down that knowledge to who coming up under you, right? They're supposed to, at a certain rank, you need to know the history, you need to know the instruments, you need to know certain movements, you need to know the stories in the music, you need to know all of this. So for the capoeira community, I think it's up to the ones in charge. And because we had schools, each head need to know how to transition that knowledge to the other generation. And the project I did, for example, I didn't really wanted to keep I didn't want it to keep that knowledge within just the Capra community, right? I wanted to take it to literal communities. I also started that project in Belmont, right? I was setting up to do it on the Beatam as well, okay? And then this whole COVID thing happened. But but I think it is the responsibility of the elders to pass it down. And we need to learn to adapt. What I did, not giving myself props, I think it was genius to get it on the ground, more or less. To get capoeira and the knowledge of capoeira and the history of capoeira on the ground, I decided to go into these communities, you know, and expand these children's minds. I even this year I wanted to take as much of them as possible and travel with them, you know, not for the sake of, yo, I left Trinidad. No, where I was taking you is where I could show you, look, a slave lived there, you know, a slave ran away, you know, and got his independence. And you see this whole village, look, there's a shop there. They make their own cheese, they make their own milk. Look, and they evolve because we're not talking about bartering, we're talking about currency exchange. So I don't want anybody to look at it as anything primitive, you know. So yeah, in a nutshell, I think it's up to the leaders to pass on everything they know. And once we continue doing that, once we ourselves who never stop learning, I think the history of what we are practicing would be okay. Because a lot of people don't know what is capoeira, don't know what is calendar. I think now compared to, let's say, 10 years ago, because up to this day, a lot of people telling me, what is that? You know, but because of the internet and, well, projects being done and stuff like that, I think it's on the ground a lot more, it's in the media a lot more, so a lot of people know. And when we talk about passing down the history and stuff, I think I think we're doing a good job at it, because when I was younger, I really didn't used to hear anything about Capra on the radio, on the TV, nothing, nothing. Right? Look, Jamie talking about calendar. I always saw it because I know Benji and I always saw it, but I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know about it in depth, you know. At one point I didn't even know Capra existed. But I knew that the calendar was there, but I never knew what it was about. You know, so I think we really doing a good job, and we need to start to push more of putting our art forms on the ground and not just using it towards a selected few. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I hope I answered your question properly, Jamie.
Yes, man. Jamie?
I feel like I forgot what the question was.
we talking archiving,
Archiving, passing
archiving your
down.
practice and
Okay.
the handing down of the
The
knowledge is.
Yes, I remember now. Thank you. Thank you, Abeo. So
You mean
the
as name?
I got you,
archiving.
boo.
No, you just where because I know you do. Um, the archiving of Bois Academy consists of the archiving of Bois Academy consists of us doing video archiving, recording of. There's been already a slew of live ways that have been recorded by stick fighters who are also chantoiles. Inside of the work, we have written documentation of things that we're also disseminating as well too. The archive right now, we would like it to be open to the public. So usually when we work with CSEC students, CAPE students, different people that are doing research, so they can always come to us to get this information if it's needed for a particular project. But we don't necessarily let things leave all the time. So if you need it, then you can come,
You
sit in
better
the
not.
space, get what you need to get.
Because they will get
So
put
the
and walk
archiving
away and
project we
never
have
come
right,
back.
and the whole thing is that, you know, we're very generous. And the way that Kalinda works and the spirit of Kalinda works, things always find its way back to us. So we try not to operate from a certain kind of Western mindset or a mindset of fear that it won't come back. But it's just to, you know, because we're building it, Benji has been building it for the last 10, 15 years. So in the last 2 years, I've been helping to do that. And we still have a lot more documenting to do. But right now, video recording, written documentation of things through the dances and through the live ways, like I said. So every class that we have right now, to be a member of Bois Academy, you must be initiated into the space. So there's an initiation process that also helps with that archiving as well too. So there's different medicinal things that are also being archived that way as well. And passing it on to the children, of course, but it's not just the children, because Kalinda is a thing of that's intergenerational. So it's inside of the entire community. So everybody has something to share at some level.
Right. Now, we had touched on it earlier in terms of we were talking roles and everybody contributes, but everybody does a little bit of everything, so to speak. Um, and we had also spoken about this in the pre-conversation a little bit in terms of male, female, man, woman, and certain Western stereotypes that we've kind of we've imposed on some of these practices and forms, where we see Jamie, a woman, talking about Kalinda and being a Bois woman, and we know that there are some people who definitely associate the art form with men. I don't know when that started to really happen, because there've always been women involved in Kalinda and women involved in being Bois women and leading revolutions and leading the charge. And this is even further and wider than just the idea of the Jamet being the disruptor and the person to start it and bring the fire, so to speak. But Jamie, as a woman navigating the space, this space of martial arts, let's just speak to that experience in particular, in Trinidad and Tobago over the last, I want to say I've really seen you in the limelight doing this, in my face, so to speak. Like, you've been doing it, but seeing you doing it, and getting and being very visual with it over like the last year or so. How have you been navigating this space?
So, like any space, I think the first thing to understand about Kalinda and Jamets is that Jamets were never gendered. So it was never just a woman was a Jamet, it was a nation of people. So Jamet referred to man and woman. I think that definitely the separation of the woman from Kalinda, two things I feel like it came from, or maybe three. One, somebody didn't call somebody's name. And from doing that over a period of time, it kind of just dropped off. And I don't, because of the stick fighters that I know, they've always told me about women stick fighters. They told me about the women stick fighters that have trained them. So I don't know that Kalinda that people have that image of. In terms of navigating the space, because I think that, and not inside the Kalinda community, actually, it comes from outside of the Kalinda community, and people having, I'll use the word exoticizing the Bois woman in a certain kind of way. And then because of how I am as a person and how I show up in space, so then when they actually see me move and do certain things, like, oh, it has been challenging, but honestly, I feel like the challenge is really for me to grow and to kind of, because I'll never be able to experience the same things that Kalinda women would have experienced in the space in Trinidad and outside of the space. But I believe I keep getting breaths of memories of it and ways to help it change inside of the space. My pushback, it's happened with men in a certain way, but the men actually embrace it faster. My pushback is with women.
Really? Do tell.
My
Women
pushback-
upholding the patriarchy? Really?
Yeah.
Really?
So stunned, right?
Yes.
So what I've been looking at is how, like, if I'm doing something, because everybody knows that Benji has been doing this work for a long time, and this is my teacher and my co-researcher, they will acquiesce to him as opposed to Jamie knows what she's doing. And, because I've trained with Benji primarily, and I've learned things from David as well too. And David used to say to me, he was like, they can't touch you. You've learned from the best, And so I don't walk with that as an arrogance. I walk with it with a certain humility, because any Bois man could cut you, right? So I'm not walking around like, oh, I can't get cut. But I rest and I lie on the fact that it is not the men in the space that are doing it. I feel like it is a women in the space that push it in a particular way. It is never a thing of Jamie is doing this work and wow, we're so proud of you. And I'll get it in my face. But then if I'm doing something like this, there's a certain energy that comes. Or somebody will say, oh, you're a Bois woman. No. So we belittle things in a certain kind of, you're dancing, you're not stick fighting. And I'm looking around like, pick up a stick and find out. You know,
Mm.
which
That's
one I
really
do?
interesting. It's
You know,
interesting. Quan, what I mean, speaking from a man's perspective, the role of women, or maybe not the role of women, that just feels so
Yeah, because women,
Western in its phrasing, but women within the capoeira space,
yeah,
how what's the relationship? How do they navigate?
they don't have a role. Um, we would, I wouldn't say the man have a role or woman have a role. It's
okay.
just because of, yeah. See, a man might be, you might see a guy in the other, but that doesn't mean the woman can be like raw in skill, because we tend to judge on things because of how it looks, right? I think people say that it's a more male dominated sport, art form, martial arts, right? I think they say that because of the people who fought to bring it to the forefront, meaning Meshe Bimba, Meshe Pashinya, and so on and so forth. Okay. Um, I think that now I'm very close to my mom. Okay, so I look at her and I use her to measure a lot of things, right? And I think that it's not that a man have a role or a woman have a role. I just think because of time, place, and experience. Because we talk more Meshe Bimba, we don't know if he went home at night and saying, feeling to give up on everything, and his wife right there, babe, no, you have this, you got this. So that's the kind of things I look at. And women, there's a lot of women in the Capra community, they hold the mantle of meshes, masters, right? Um, we call them mesher, right? They hold the mantle of professors and all of this. There are a lot of women leading schools. So I don't think it's a rule thing. I just think if you want it, you could have it. That's how it is with capoeira. It's just you
Right.
see a lot more men in the forefront because of the fight. You
Mm.
women see men as protectors and whatnot. So
We do.
automatically,
We do.
I think so. I'd
Be
like to
careful,
believe so.
Quan. Be careful, Quan.
Yeah, I gotta be careful. Now, we could go
Yeah.
there, we could go
Yeah.
there, Jim.
Because you just said that there were no roles, and then you said that women see men as protectors. So that would be
No,
giving us a role.
no,
Mhm.
no. I'm
Correct
talking
yourself.
about
I'm waiting for
I'm
it.
talking about society.
Oh,
I'm speaking
society.
about,
Nothing capoeira.
yeah.
No. Oh.
No,
So you
society,
okay?
society.
I like
And by
the pattern you're
society,
doing. You're
who
doing that little
exactly
backflip.
Huh?
by society, who exactly do we mean?
I
I
mean,
think
like, I'm,
sometimes.
I'm, I mean, Abio, like somebody you might be looking on. If you come to a order, automatically you think, okay, because you're seeing more men than women, okay? You might think automatically, this sport is, I had that asked a lot of times. If this sport is for men, you'd see women there because you're not seeing a lot, you ask them if it's for men, right? So a lot of people have the notion that the men are the ones to to the Western world, and that's what it is. The man, this is how they used to rock it, and woman stay home and clean and cook, and let we bring in the money and broaden we back. You understand? That's how people
For
perceive
me,
it.
I hear you, and I like the fact that you make that distinction of the Western world, because in most of the research that you would do in terms of systems and practices and rituals that
Mm.
come out of the African continent, most of them about the maternal, the feminine, the matriarchy as opposed to the patriarchy. So which is not to say that one is greater than the other.
Right.
Both energies are
Can I
equally
say
important. There must be balance.
right? Sorry, Abe, I just want to say I agree with you. No energy is greater than other, but if we speak about West Central Africa and where these forms came from, matrilinity was a thing. Trinidad and Tobago has a matrilineal space. It's
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
matrifocal.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
We
we
don't
do.
think about it that way, right? And if we actually stayed inside, because matrilinity and matrifocal doesn't look at, oh, the man is in charge or the woman's in charge, right? There's a balance that happens inside of those forms. So if the balance is happening, somebody just said it, yes, there must be balance. If the balance is happening, then we don't have to worry about patriarchy. Again, that's another construct that was given to us. And again, it has its conveniences inside of it, you know? And I said that I do feel like I'm getting a certain, and it feels away from women when I get it, Abeo, because I'm a woman, right?
We pick up those energies.
It feels away.
Yeah.
And yeah, and women have always been in stick fighting. When I rolled up in Kalinda, I didn't have a thought in my mind like, oh, can I do this if I'm a woman? You know, and I've heard other women martial artists say this, and I keep for the last couple weeks asking myself, well, maybe you should be concerned about this, and I never have been, because I didn't grow up that way. You know, most of us would have grew up doing the Kandeka style that I explained earlier of getting headbutt by our parents. That was play. So all I know is play and performance and heights, transcendence. You know what I mean? I don't know about looking at somebody like, oh, it's a man. So now I had to take some things into consideration.
No.
So, and I think a lot of women, before we have certain things put on us inside of these constructs, are not thinking that way. And you'll see it throughout history, especially our histories in particular. You know, Jamet women are the perfect example. They used to have, a shopkeeper of mine was telling me this story. So they used to take glass bottles, put it inside of a crocus bag, mash up the glass, put the glass on top of the bag, and then go into a trance and dance, you women and the men. No cut, no nothing. I don't think those Jamet women and men were thinking about a certain kind of role. Were there things that everybody had, you know what I mean? It's not a gender role. We have these things now with pronouns and everything, and I'm all for everybody doing whatever it is they need to do. But we've always had pronouns. We've always done that. When we, in our dialect, them sort of like me. That them could be one person.
It could be two, it could be he, it could be she.
It could be two, it could be
all
she, it could be he, and
that's right.
So all the things that are coming up in this new way, we've always had
done it. It's existed all along.
Yeah, which is what we talk about. The body remembers. It's the memory that needs to be invoked. It's our memories that we're missing, and we can only get there. This Corona COVID time has given us a great blight to sit and do it. So if we stop stressing about the unknown, which is always the case, there's always an unknown. When our ancestors experienced slavery, there were a lot of unknowns, and I'm sure they weren't sitting there like, oh, I wonder if I'm gonna die tomorrow. No, they were in a space of virtuosity that I'm going to live. That comes at the end of the cycle. When I get to that part of the cycle, I'll deal with it when I get there, you know? So, okay, I'm done.
No,
I got you hot there, have you?
Yeah. You catch up. But let's as we start to slowly wind it down, so to speak. We talking about these two practices, these two forms, and your specific practices, because the forms exist, but everybody will build their own practice within a particular art form that will be different and unique to them. Where do you see the art form one and your specific practice fitting into this today context? And when I say today context, like we keep talking about 2020, we will beat it like a road march henceforth, in terms of there's something about this time that we're in right about now. People have said reckoning, people have said rebirth. I think like Jamie has said, it has given us the blight to really come back to basis, you know, outer body back to yourself kind of vibes, in terms of getting back to ground zero and starting again, this re-emergence of this movement that is Black consciousness. You know, we've had it very many times. We had the Cambule, we had the 1970, we now in the era of Black Lives Matter that has transcended around the world. And we're talking, and systemic racism is now, we're not scared to talk about it anymore. We're not talking about it in hushed whispers and behind closed doors. It out there. where do you see this art form and your specific practice fitting within those contexts?
I think that
I'll go out. Oh, Jamie.
moving from the space of historical, embodied, spiritual things, I want to mention this woman, stick fighter's name. She would have been a woman king stick fighter. Ras Monifa is her name. And she never lose a fight. So for me, the continuation of Kalinda, how I see it in the world, Kalinda right now is pulling herself together. We at Bois Academy are currently in contact with people in the region and internationally to bring the forms back inside of Kalinda. And because what has happened is that we have some things, we have a lot of things actually, and these other places have things that we don't remember. So it's connecting with those spaces so that we all can start collectively remembering. I see Kalinda changing the world. If I'm being completely honest, I see Kalinda changing. If we embrace it the way that we're supposed to in Trinidad and Tobago, it will change Trinidad and Tobago. If the world, I think, is more ready to embrace it in a particular way because it's something new in their eyes. I heard someone say the other day, "Oh, the Kalinda dance, they don't do that anymore." So that was like mind blowing to me when I know that we definitely do it here in Trinidad, right? I think that with the research that Bois Academy, Benji and I are doing, that it's an opportunity for us to reclaim what is ours. You know, it's an opportunity to see ourselves. Kalinda is also a manifestation of being. So it's not just something where you come and you learn stick fights and you learn drum, you learn the live ways. It is something that literally is going to rearrange yourself to what the authenticity of you is supposed to be. I see Sharon saying that we need this in tangible ways. The thing is that we have to seek things out. Like I said, Benji's been doing this work for 15 years. It blows my mind when people say that they don't know what Bois Academy is, or they didn't know that this place existed. I think that we pay attention to what we want to pay attention to. If something is not popular in a particular way, we may not gravitate towards it. Not knocking anybody for that. You got to live your life the best way you know how to do that. But if we're trying to get to a place of freedom, we first need to understand we're already liberated. So start there. Nobody's got you chained up. You're already free, and move from that I am place, and everything else will come into play. So beyond making sure that the Kalinda people that are in this space feel that love and that liberation, and then taking the Philbert Kalinda technique to a point where, because ballet could never be the foundation of Caribbean dance.
Facts. Facts.
So if we have a system like Kalinda that is already, for me, the progenitor of all dance form, I still got to prove it. But what I'm looking at, it looks like every dance that I've ever learned. So if that's the case, and we have that in our country, why is it not the national form of dance? Why is it not the thing that everyone in the country is learning? Even if you don't want to do it, just a skill that you have in your skill set, because it's a discipline that then starts to change your way of life. Kalinda people don't deal with each other in a particular kind of way. I've only gotten love from Kalinda people. Only ever, 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 ever. You know? And I'm not just talking about, like, I'm talking about the tough love, all of it. It is something that trained you to be a high level, high functioning being. And then understand that you're connected to this world and the next, and your ancestors are right there when you need them. So for me, Kalinda can change the world. And if we embrace it in a particular way, then it can be changed.
Fair.
So.
Quan?
Everything Jamie said. Okay. All right. For me, going forward with capoeira and having the will embrace it, I think because it adapts so well to everything around it, to look cool or to look nice or to look like a dance. It's been doing that for the past how much years, okay? And I think the community in Trinidad right now, the Capoeira community, the younger ones that coming up in rank, I think they're doing a really good job in terms of coming together to put it out there. We already know Capoeira is in the world. It's spreading across the world. But what I'll urge these instructors and leaders to do is to always remember to teach your students about lineage, right? You need to teach your students about the cultures of it because it's something, it's a thin line, because it's something that adapts to a lot of stuff so much, right? Because it has changed so much along the years, right? Because it adapts so well. I'm hoping that it doesn't loses its essence, its originality, you know. So with the heads at pushing it now, I think they're doing a really good job at keeping it as authentic as possible and cultural as possible. As I said, everything Jamie said, and I really can't. Because both of us, we doing acts that more or less, she's speaking and I was only seeing capoeira, right? So I understand what it's about a lot more now, Jamie. And I think everything Jamie said, yes,
When you get a chance, Quan, look into Ngolo. That's a form I was talking about that is basically the mother of capoeira. The Mbengalas, which is a group in West Central Africa. Queen and Zinga would have been part of that group.
was it
Queen
term you
Zinga.
just said? Was it term?
Mbengala.
No. The
Ngolo. Ngolo.
right.
Yeah,
Ngolo.
so Ngolo, yeah,
Well,
so Ngolo was basically why they do the inversions in capoeira, why they did the
Angola.
inversions in Angola. Exactly, Angola, but the form was called Ngolo. Yeah, and
Okay.
it wasn't towards that.
Portuguese.
They,
No.
come on now, this is
Meaning
pre-colonial we're talking about.
no, right. What I'm saying
Talk to me.
is the Angola, right? The Angola. The term you use in song is similar. So what I'm saying is
Yes,
if they
because it came from
change it to the
Angola.
right. Oh, okay. Good.
No, it came from Angola, but it's called Ngolo. Yeah.
Oh,
So it
okay.
speaks to, yeah. So if you spell it, then you just put it in a group. Yeah. And Ngolo. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Angola.
if
Zebra
you see
dance.
it, they attribute it to the zebra, but there's a bunch of other attributions as well too. Basically what is happening, so that Kalunga line that I explained, right? The inversions are happening because it was a spiritual thing that they were doing. It was said that the ancestors were walking upside down. So they were walking in these inversions. So they were imitating the ancestors and they were connecting spiritually that way. So when you're doing the inversions, why you would cry is not necessarily because of trauma. You're connecting to
That
those
connection.
ancestors directly. When I hold my stick in my hand, when I dance, that's a connection. I'm on the Kalunga line, you know? So we have to, those are the things that we have to, I feel like, investigate and see. I saw Benji put in the doing, and then I said in the being. It's in our being. Kalinda is not something that you do. You have to be Kalinda, you know?
It has to
I
be
take
part
it,
of you.
yeah, it's in my everyday. You know, part of my prayer is that it be in my heart, my mind, my spirit. It be on my lips and my fingertips. It be at my feet and guide my path.
Yes.
So I'm moving with that energy constantly. I know it requires accountability. It requires Quan, if you step a line, is not to necessarily to bust your head or no. I might have to switch it up and give you a little bit of love because I know you can't necessarily defend yourself. I might kill you if I do that. We're not about killing people just for the sake of doing that. We are the protectors of the space. If I make a war with somebody else, how am I protecting all the people around me by just going and making war all over the place?
Collateral. You're
You
causing
know?
collateral damage.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's in the
Guys.
being. Yeah. We gotta go.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
go.
I mean, we could talk from
Gosh,
now
this
till
thing going
like
so sweet. Right?
it's
Teaching me,
just
man.
so much information and that y'all give. And I think the beauty of having these conversations is in the learning from each other. You know, everybody has you all have so much to bring to the table, and I'm seeing people in the comment section in the chat here saying that more of these conversations need to happen. You know, somebody was talking in the chat about capoeiristas who led black movements in Brazil, that now I'm like interested, that I want to go and like, you know, research that and find it. You know what I mean? So this is this is the kind of diasporic connections that we really, really need to make. And it's super important. And I'm so, so honored that the Black Consciousness Festival would have found me worthy enough to moderate this evening, and also reach out to the both of you all to share here this evening. So on that note, I want to thank the two of you all. I hope that our paths cross creatively sometime soon, and that we can do some work together.
Because Ariel teased me here today, so I'm making sure it cross.
Yeah. Yes. Walk on the American people. Get them. Yes.
Boom, 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 boom.
And on that note, we want to thank everybody who would have tuned in here this evening. We bless you. We are so humble that you decided to spend your Friday evening with us. And on that, hand it back over to Heather. Bless you, bless you, bless you. Ashe, ashe, ashe.
Thank you all very much. I think it goes without saying that tonight's conversation was powerful and educative, and we thank you very much for having been here. Abeo, I don't know why you think you couldn't have done this. This was meant for you, clearly. Thank you very much to Quan as well, and Jamie, for having shared of their life, of their experience, and of their journey. And we ask all of you who have joined us tonight, we thank you, but we ask you to tell a friend and tell a colleague and tell a family member about this festival. It's a space for us all to learn, a space for us all to share, a space for us all to grow. Our 20 conversations and cultural activities continue all throughout the month of November. To end off the week, tomorrow, Saturday, we have a bumper day. We start at 1 p.m. Trinidad time with an African movement workshop. At 4 p.m., we have a Nigerian food demonstration. And at 7 p.m., we have the DJs in the dance who will be sharing with us dancehall and conscious reggae music. On Sunday, we talk love. Love is love. Pride, diversity, and inclusion of the LGBTQIA plus communities. And we continue next week. We start off Monday talking Zouk with Carla Gonzalez and Kassav. Zouk is the only medicine we have. So stay tuned. Join us at www.theblackconsciousnessfestival.com. Please don't forget to submit the names of your ancestors and those you would like to revere and venerate on our Ancestral Memorial page. Thank you very, very much, everyone who contributed to tonight's experience, and join us again.